On the weekly time frame on the GBPUSD, we have been bearish since the mid last year, and this month makes it a year since the pound has been bearish against the dollar. So this gives us more insight into the strength of the dollar against the GBPUSD. So on the weekly time frame, I have drawn and identified a trend line which we might be able to work around with going into the new week. First of all, if we look closely into what is happening, we will notice that price has been respecting the trend line since the beginning of last year, as we saw the first rejection of that trend line, after which we saw the breakout of the trend line. Then we saw multiple rejections since mid June and mid May of 2021, as we saw price continue to respect the trend line, as price continued to find lower lows and lower highs. However, in the beginning of the year, we saw a bullish momentum which we thought would probably push price further up. But unfortunately, since the war in Ukraine, price continued to find lower lows and lower highs until we finally saw that breakdown of that trend line in the month of April this year. And as you can see, price is currently rocking around 1.22 level at this point in time. So with this information gathered, we really want to look into how to take advantage of this trade. How are we going to buy? How are we going to sell? Well, for me, on my own perspective, I am thinking selling opportunity will most be appropriate at this point in time, considering the long-term bearish momentum, and secondly, the significant breakdown of this trend line mid-April is more sign inclined to more of a bearish momentum in the nearest future. However, this is not cast in stone already, as we still need structures and patterns to confirm that we are going to be continuing bearish or probably we are going to be moving to the upside. So with this information gathered on the weekly time frame, it is pertinent that we zoom into the left structure and see what we have around that area. If we look closely into what is happening around that area, we can identify that we have somewhere around here, which has been a demand structure since the beginning of um, August 2016, and this area has been holding price supported for some time, and this is a span of 6 years thereabout, which we see that participants in the market have a memory for buying power from that particular area. So with this information, we want to label this area a demand zone. So good. Though we had the breakdown of this area earlier in the year 2020, however, we saw sharp rejections of that area, after which price moved to the upside from that area. And now price appears to be back in the zone. So we need to scale down to a much lower time frame to have a quick perspective into what is really happening at this point in time. So if we scale down to a much lower time frame, let's say the 4 hours time frame, for instance, I think we begin to see that okay, we begin to see that since the beginning of the month, we've been on a bearish momentum. As you can see, price continue to find lower lows, and then we saw this move up before the breakdown of that trend line happened earlier this month. And since the breakdown happened, we continue to see price continue to find lower lows and lower highs until it finally found itself around 1.21500 area. which is right within that demand zone we identified on the weekly time frame. However, if you really want to take advantage of this and consider the long-term bearish momentum on this chart, it is most appropriate that we look for selling opportunities instead. So at this point in time, we really need to identify a resistant trend line that will sink in the trend that we already identified on the higher time frame. So if I bring out my line chart and look at what has been happening lately, we will have something that looks more like this. We have a trend line right on the 4 hours time frame, which is also a resistant level that we can walk around with. So allow me to label, give this an highlighting to red. So this signifies our selling pressure, and then we have something like this. Okay. So the first thing I noticed was that before the breakdown of this, before the significant breakdown of this bullish trend line, this temporary bullish trend line, let me give it a dotted line instead. Okay, we had a demand zone around this area. We had the demand zone around this area, which held price supported for I think about a week before we saw that significant breakdown earlier this month around this area. And since that breakdown happened, we also had another demand zone around this area that was broken down. Sorry, I don't. Sorry, I mean resistance zone rather. The supply zone instead. We had a supply zone around here. Allow me to label this for clarity's sake. We had a supply zone around here. Let me give it 12 and let's give this a light red. So we had a supply zone around here which held price resisted price for about a week thereabout before we saw that push to the downside one more time. And that push looks more like this, another breakdown of structure sending price to the downside one more time, as we can see here. So right now, at this point in time on the 4 hours time frame, despite the fact that we're within a demand zone, I'm still of the opinion that we might still be experiencing a sell opportunity at this point. So we want to be looking for what might look like, what will I call a retracement into a golden zone area where we can be looking for an advantage to sell again. So now, if we look left, we can see that we have structures to work with as we have an impulse leg that ran since mid-April right through to the demand zone. And with this impulse leg, we want to be looking for a retracement into the golden zone area. And what do I call the golden zone area? The golden zone area is an area between the 50 and the 78.6% retracement of the previous impulse leg. And if we bring out our retracement tool and we run it through that impulse leg, we're going to be having a golden zone area right around here. So right around the 1.29 and 1.26 area, which for me looks to be an opportunity to sell in the nearest future. So if you allow me to delete this retracement tool as it has finished this job, then what we want to be looking for at this point, allow me to delete this. Then I also, before that, I also identify a trend line right around here. If we bring out my line chart, we can see that we have something around this area that we can work with as well. Um, let's see this as a temporary trend line. I'll reduce this size and let's make this red. Good. So we have something like this that will be our guide going into the new week. First of all, the first expectation on this one is we might be seeing price do something like this, what I would call a retest of this, a rejection of this trend line, probably price move into the supply zone, which also shares a confluence with the breakdown of that trend line, which will be the next resistant line, where we will be looking for structures that will support a trend continuation to the downside. However, on the flip side, there is a potential that we might be having a breakout of that trend line, that temporary trend that we just identified, a retest into that structure, which is also shares a confluence with the demand zone, after which we look for breakout of structure, thereby turning into something like a reversal pattern, a retest of structure with a confirmation of a bullish momentum, which might be temporary and could be the retracement phase of the last impulse leg we identified. After which we'll be looking for structures within the cellular opportunity zone, which also shares a component with a trend line we identified on the weekly time frame for a trend continuation to the downside. So if we are going to take a counter trend opportunity from this area, we want to be looking for a breakout of the structure, a retest of structure. Then we look for structures that supports a trend continuation to the upside. And if we are going to take a counter opportunity, that would be right above that temporary trend line and with a potential take profit target of about a minimum of, let's say, 300 pips in that regard. If you are a counter trend trader, then it is probably suitable that we look for structures that will support that. And one of that is a breakout of that temporary trend line. Then we look for a key level that we use as our guide going into the new week. And if we bring out our line charts and want to look for key levels, then we can identify somewhere around here for buying opportunity. And then we have something like this. Well, we have it like this, and the reason why is this area has been a support level, and right here it has been a resistant level at this point, making it the key level we can walk around with. So what we want to be doing at this point is we want to be looking forward to a breakout of that structure, which is also right above that key level. Then we look for a retest into that level, look for structures that support a momentum to the upside, and with the take profit target at around the selling opportunity zone, which is right between 1.29 and 1.26 area, after which we might be looking for selling opportunities in the form of a reversal setup that will send price going down, probably send price going up, depending on whatever happens at that point in time. So if we see, and secondly, um, if we see an opportunity right in the form, if we see structures right in the form of a rejection of this trend line, or probably a strike into the supply zone, and we see price come back down, then we want to be looking for a breakdown of this key level, which also shares a confluence with the breakdown of that trend line to look for opportunities to go downwards. And in addition to that, we would want to notice that we could be having a breakdown of this, sorry, excuse me, please. We could be having a breakdown of this trend line too as well, which you can see that since the beginning of the month, we've been having such patterns, such pattern coming up every single time. As we saw one here, we saw one here, we saw the second one here. We might be able to see a third one around this area where we'll look for a breakdown of that trend line, then a retest of that trend line like I showed here, a breakdown of that trend line, which also shares a confluence with that bearish trend line, then right below this key level, we could be looking for an opportunity to sell. So right below this key level around this area, we could be looking for an opportunity to sell the GBP against the USD. So we might be having something like this with the stop loss right above that key level with around 60 pips thereabout. Then with the take profit target at the extension of that impulse leg. That's mini impulse leg that we saw here. This one that ran from the supply zone, this impulse leg. We can be having, if we bring out our Fibonacci extension tool and we're running through that impulse leg, we could be having um, a retreat, a take profit target for around this area, which is around 140 pips thereabout. And if we want to be looking for, sorry, um, is right below this key level. We're having around 150 pips take profit target. And secondly, if we want to be looking for the counter trend opportunity, this is what we want to be looking out for: a breakout of that trend line, a retest into that trend line. To this bullish trend line, we look for structures right above that key level to support a trend continuation to the upside. So in that regard, we want to be taking an opportunity of a bullish momentum right above that key level around this area, where we will be looking forward to a take profit target within that selling opportunity zone, which we have a minimum here at around 300, 350 pips thereabout, with a stop loss right below that key level at around 70 pips. So this is what my perspective is going to be like going into the new week. The video is already long. I was just trying to make sure that I make a little bit more sense in this regard. So I would like to pause the video here, and as soon as market opens on Monday, I will definitely give an update, and this will be dependent on the nature of price action when market resumes. Also, at the comment section below, there's always um, at one point in time, I try as possible to give updates on what my plans are in the comment section below my TradingView account. So in this regard, I want to wish you a wonderful weekend, and you have a blissful preparation going into the new week. Thank you very much.